hold on a second. I know so much about how to treat your wife and how to be a husband and what's good and what's bad, what's halal and what's haram. None of that seems to be effective in what really matters to me right now. Well, I would say that if the Prophet ﷺ, or if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's guidance is present in your relationship with your wife, then you expect your relationship with your wife to be amazing. And every time a difficulty comes up, you'll be able to deal with it because you've got guidance on your side. What is the point of having God's guidance on your side if it doesn't work?
Assalamu alaikum, Mustafa.
Wa alaikum salam.
How's it going? You alright?
As if you've just met.
Yeah, but all that previous salam has to go
Redone.
in the back of your mind. That was all fake. This is the real salam.
Oh well, today's all about getting it real. So
I mean, normally we start off by assalamu alaikum everyone, introducing our guests. But as you know, you're a bit of an enigma. I was trying to think. I've known Mustafa for many years. I've been seeing you here and there, but I couldn't quite put my finger on, and I think that's on purpose. You've created this persona about yourself. There's a bit of activism there, a bit of community work, a bit of talab al-ilm, bit of politics, bit of masked vigilante by night. That was a private one, isn't it? I forget that bit. But it's hard to, mashallah, because you're a man of many talents. It's hard to put your finger on. So. Probably do an intro afterwards. After I'll just say, through the camera, Assalamu alaikum. Today we spoke about Mustafa, and this is how he made us feel. So, part of your skill set obviously is, helping, just giving advice to brothers like myself. So, I'm trying to get some advice as well, from you to maybe like a free therapy session, you can call it. I don't know if you're qualified as a counselor as well, but. I think it's good to get more and more people to know you, mashallah.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me and inviting me to speak. I'm usually shy, although I've been on camera for a long time, especially for TV channels and stuff. But every time I'm on camera, I'm still a bit camera shy. But somewhere along the line, about 8 years ago, I chose to cut out, no more public appearances. And I'll share with you maybe,
what brought that about?
Really? You want to know? I think maybe...
Only if it's interesting.
Well...
Just kidding, I'm sorry.
Well, actually, it's quite relevant to what we're going to... Maybe, some of the stuff that we will touch on today. So, I consider myself as a talib al-ilm, a person who's been seeking knowledge for a very long time. Since I was 13, my dad put me into the madrasa system in Bangladesh. So we were here, went over there, and I was really interested in religious studies. So, alhamdulillah, I was one of the good students in Bangladesh, and then came over here and continued that. So, and then I studied in Syria with Sheikh Abdullah Daklubab, Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Arnaout, and then followed that through in Mauritania. And I kind of felt like I've covered the syllabus, the basic syllabus that is recommended by Mashayikh. And then I'm in the public platform doing khutbahs and delivering speeches and speaking to people. But I realized that it wasn't really helping me in my personal life. So I went through a divorce. And I'm like, hold on a second. I know so much about how to treat your wife and how to be a husband and what's good and what's bad, what's halal and what's haram. But none of that seems to be effective in what really matters to me right now. And so I've got this challenge and it's not working, which is my relationship. And I know all of this stuff. So what's the point of all of this?
So you knew the theory.
Yeah. What we call the knowledge.
Yeah.
I had the knowledge, quote unquote, which I no longer subscribe to as knowledge, or it could be knowledge, but it's not necessarily beneficial knowledge. So even if you know the whole compendium of Ibn Taymiyyah's Fatawa, right? Is it beneficial knowledge or is it information that you have? So I realized in 2015 that actually a lot of it is just stuff that I know, and it was lingering in the back of my mind, like, am I just talking to an audience because I know stuff and I can talk about it, or am I making a difference? So I remember I called up Islam Channel and I said, I'm cancelling all my shows. And they said, why? And I said, well, because I really don't have anything to say. They said, Brother Mustafa, you're the only one who has 12 months plan of all the content and every session you're going to do, and you're telling me you don't have anything to say. I say, absolutely, all of that is rubbish. I've said it before, 10 people have said it before. I'm just going to probably say it in my own language and look good and sound intellectual and wow. But that's not what I'm after anymore. I want to see actual impact in my life, and if I'm actually contributing to people in my community, or am I just another waffler? That's where it's kind of stopped me going to public gatherings.
I notice as well, not just as myself, but generally in public, that as I get older and older, I perceive the difference between talking about something and doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very we talk about Sharia a lot.
Yeah.
But do we do it? And when we talk about it, what's our intention? Do I just want to convey information from one person to the next, as though it's just maybe there's an element of ego. I want to look good. I want to make it look like I know something, so I give an answer. Or do I actually want some effective change in the person I'm speaking to?
Yeah,
and it's really difficult not to. We learn this from just looking at mashayikh and stuff. They might very often they won't answer a question, even though they know the answer.
Yeah.
Because answering the question as it's put is not good for the individual asking, for example, or there might be a bigger maslaha to direct the conversation somewhere else. But it's irresistible to not convey something. You technically know the information.
Yeah. Well, we're in the culture of it, aren't we? We're in the culture of like armchair punditry, right? And I think I sent you a message saying, the kind of conversation we want to have that's going to make a difference is not a descriptive conversation like people do, say, for example, football match. You can sit there, you and I can analyze and talk about the football match being on the stands. Like the football pundits, they sit there on the stands and they talk. And the kind of conversation that actually makes a difference is on the field. Very few people are actually making a difference, making the events happen in a football game. And those 22 people on the ground, if I'm right.
So what does that look like for Islam and Islamic discourse?
I guess
who are the players and who are the spectators?
Well, this is the thing. Are there any players in Islamic discourse? Do we need more are there any commentators rather? Do we need commentators, or do we actually need people who are being Muslim instead of talking about Islam? I think distinction you made earlier on. You can talk about something, but doing that thing is very different. And I think for a long while we've focused on talking about things because it's easier. But I think we're going to come to an end of that because now knowledge economy has become so easy. Everybody has access to so much information. And funnily enough, though, what did our scholars used to say about learning knowledge from books?
Yeah, you'll have many mistakes.
And so we don't take knowledge from the books, we take knowledge from the chest of others, we say. However, if you look at modern day scholarship, we are very academic. We can talk about stuff. I can talk about fiqh, I can talk about the usul of fiqh, I can talk about X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
But none of that was actually making a difference in my life, nor in the life of the audience that I am dealing with. So, yeah, I mean, we've got to come to a stop sometime and say, hold on a second, what's going on?
There's a nice statement, I think, of Imam Malik. He said, knowledge used to be a dot, but ignorance turned it into a sea.
Wow. Wow.
Like the more ignorance there is, the more you have to explain and waffle and all that kind of stuff, I guess.
Yeah, so, your question of what do we need, I think we've gathered so much of information now, so much has been written, Now we need to look at, hold on a second, what's the gap between knowing and doing? And work on that. And a lot of the time that's not talking about stuff, that's talking stuff.
So that's been your journey over the last 8 years?
Last 8 years has been focused on, hold on a second, so what is the point of me knowing all of this if it's not present in my life? And if it isn't present in my life, what does it look like? What would the impact be? You see, the status quo of things is when somebody asks you, Salman, how are you? What do you say?
Normally the pre-prepared answer, which is good, alhamdulillah, how are you?
Yeah, good, alhamdulillah, how are you? And that's what everybody says.
Yeah.
Now, even if things aren't good, right, and you were okay to tell me about it, what would you say?
Probably the same.
It's okay. Oh, it's work in progress. Yeah. Or you might say,
Alhamdulillah ala kulli hal.
Alhamdulillah ala kulli hal.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really get us anywhere, does it? And that's the status quo we live in. Like, if it's really bad, and you and I know it's bad, what do we say? We say, well, it's probably meant to be this way. Right? Or
blame qadar.
Oh yeah, I know, absolutely. Like it's written. It's supposed to happen this way, so brother, I just have to be patient with it. Or we'll say, it's like, oh, Allah will sort it out. But you were in the 90s. How old are you now?
How do I look?
I mean, 18.
Oh. Well, I need to. I don't have a sound effect for that. Okay, so I'm 37.
MashaAllah. Awesome, right? So you probably were around in the 90s when we had the big hype here. You were quite young.
Yeah.
Now, we used to have this thing of Mahdi coming next year. The Mahdi is coming. He's
I don't remember that.
Yeah. Oh, you know, the Ramadan in which there's going to be the full moon and the Jum'ah coinciding together. That's the Ramadan, Mahdi is going to come. And we heard that year after year after year, the Mahdi is coming, or the Mujaddid is coming, or something's going to happen very soon, inshallah, everything's going to be okay. Now, is it okay? What is the situation? How is it?
So people are waiting for some kind of external actor to come. Is that what you're saying?
Either we're waiting for external actor to come, right? Or we just pretend it's okay, like fake it till we make it. Or like I was, a wounded healer. You know, I have all the problems in my life, but I'm preaching to the world how perfect everything is going to be. You know, the normative conversation is very easy. How things should be. But how are things? That's a tough one to look at.
So how are things?
Well, I guess that's probably where we could start this conversation. Like, you know, where are we? But before we do that, though, what is the impact, do you say, like, of not knowing where things are? Or just saying, for you, for example, just saying, alhamdulillah, everything's good. What's the impact of that?
Yeah, I mean, I had it once be described as, you know, like on a map. You need to see the map, you need to know the destination, and you also need the you are here bit.
Yeah.
So if you don't have one of those ingredients, you can't really get anywhere.
So if you want to go from London to Norwich, and you're in Birmingham, absolutely, you say, oh, well, I want to get to Norwich, but I think I'm in London. Actually, you are not. You're in Birmingham. How's that going to work? It's not going to work out very well. So it's very important, right, to know where I stand. Do you know where you stand? That's a big question. Like,
That seems
anything
kind
that matters to
of
you.
philosophical. I mean, what do you mean? Do you know where you stand? In what regard?
I think you mentioned philosopher. There is an English philosopher who talks about this very well. I think it was Hume who talks about knowing the ground we stand on as the starting point for getting everywhere. And I think Ibn al-Qayyim mentions it as well, that the first step to our journey to Allah for the seeker is to know the ground you stand on. Where do we lie today? But not knowing where we lie today, it has its own implications, right? So as you said earlier, you can't really move. Or if you're actually taking directions, you're probably going to end up in the wrong place.
Yeah, you might go the opposite way.
You might go the opposite way. You don't really know where to start, although you think you've started a journey. And then what happens if you continue that way?
So do you mean in your journey to Allah, where do you stand?
Well,
or do you mean, I don't know, like...
Because in your journey to Allah is very abstract.
Yeah.
Right? It's very abstract. In fact, we've made it abstract. And maybe we'll get to have a little pick at that today as well.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't it? It's quite an abstract, like in your journey to Allah. Oh, where am I? You know, you can't give coordinates for that.
The only way is up.
Yeah, or down to the grave. But what I wanted to see, Salman, is that we need to get, like, there is always a consequence of not knowing where you are, whether it's about your health.
Oh, okay.
Or
so any metric where you are,
metric.
what your current status quo is.
Yeah, what is important to you, right?
And
And
so
if
like
you continue,
health, family, your
finances,
ibadah,
our
finances.
finances, and if you're in a position of responsibility and leadership, our youth, our masajid.
I coined a term recently. I think it was last year. After Ramadan, just in khutbahs and stuff, you tell people, like, the idea is, when Ramadan comes, we experience an increase in different metrics and stuff. And when we come back after Ramadan, the trick is to come back. Naturally, you're going to come down in your ibadah and your so many things. But the trick is to come down to a level which is higher than you were at before Ramadan.
Mm-hmm.
So Ramadan comes and then you're at high level, and then every year, hopefully you're increasing your... as Ibn al-Qayyim says, there's no such thing as stasis in this universe. You're either progressing or you're regressing without knowing. And I coined a statement called a self-assessment acts return.
Wow.
It's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So you have to know before what stage you're at in different metrics, right? Like, how much Quran are you reading?
Mm-hmm.
How much sadaqah am I giving? How much dua am I making? How many prayers am I making in jama'ah? How much time am I giving to XYZ project, to my family, to this, to that? So in order to know in order to ensure that you're growing year upon year, you have to know where you are, to have a self-assessment act return. And it's partly spurred by what we do anyway at Islam 21C and the broader organizations, that we have quarterly and annual check-ins and kind of what they call appraisals.
Yep.
And part of that is your Islamic development appraisal. So like a private personal thing, but we have a murabbi assigned to us that, just to make sure that we're following some kind of personal development plan, whether it's, there's an element for family, there's an element for personal development, knowledge, Quran, ibadah and that kind of stuff.
So if you're not doing that, then what happens?
And I did a poll once on social media. I asked, do you have someone who is monitoring at least your Islamic development? And I think 95% of people said no. And I was thinking that, is that, and what you're talking about essentially is tarbiyah, right? This is the in the cosmic sense. This is you're nurturing, as opposed to maybe information transfer and knowledge in the academic sense.
Absolutely.
Tarbiyah is the actual transformation, the transformative.
It's actually the vehicle that's going to get you to your ideals and the values that you subscribe to. So if you're not actually looking at yourself, if you're not looking at the metrics that are important to you or to us as a community, then would you agree that we're actually perpetuating the status quo?
Yeah, arguably.
Yeah.
Or maybe even regressing.
Maybe regressing. So if our trajectory is, downwards, then it's going to continue going in the direction it's currently in.
Yeah.
And when it's doing that, what happens, though, I would suggest, is that, especially for people like yourself and myself, who I guess maybe we're kind of matured over the years, but maybe people who are not. You are.
A lot of people tell me that.
You don't have any whites yet, but khair. You see, what happens is there's a gap between your expectations of reality and reality. And when that gap keeps widening, what happens to general people in public? Like, for example, right, you go and you're suffering, God forbid, something in your health. Or no, let's forget about that one. Yeah? Let's say you think, you go and you put your money card in your bank account and you use your bank card to spend it somewhere, and it's like lack of funds. You go to the bank and go, what's happening with my card? They say, no, you've got plenty of money. And then you go, but it's not spending. How come every time I go out to spend it doesn't work? How do you feel about that?
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
Does not compute.
Now consider an entire ummah who think that we are great, we are the best of people in the world, we are God's people, we have the true religion, we are on the right path to success in this world and the hereafter. But, we're suffering. All of this stuff is going on. How do you think they feel? How do you think the general public feel? The general public conscience and feeling?
I think that's the fertile ground for that kind of thinking of something big, something cataclysmic is required. Mahdi, Khilafah, something external to my efforts. Mm-hmm. Wait for that thing to come or talk about it, or that it's so far away that talking about it is kind of comforting and numbing.
Yeah.
Rather than the things that, the 5 things I can do right now to edge us towards a better position, I won't do those because I'd rather talk about something that has a kind of inebriating effect.
Absolutely. But do consider you and I...
Do I get the right answer?
There isn't one. With me, there isn't the right answer. It's your view of how things are is important to you. And your view of how things are is what impacts your life. So how you see your health is what's going to impact your health. How you see your relationship with your wife or your children is what's going to impact your life and children. So your truth is what matters, really. And I think overall we've got kind of like ummatic truths. Like we can look at the ummah and go, oh, where are we? What are we doing as an entire community? What are we doing as a mosque? What are we doing as an individual organization? What are we doing as an individual? And then you begin to start seeing, oh, okay, well, we're doing great here, but we're not doing so great there. Not there.
SWOT analysis.
Probably. Something is needed for us to, unless we do, as you said, we have some metrics to look at where we are. We cannot carry on with numbing tools like, yeah, well, the Mahdi is coming. Inshallah, everything's going to be okay. Because sooner or later, that's going to give in. And the impact of that is what? Hemorrhage. Yeah?
So that's what you've been thinking about the last
Not
several
thinking
years,
about it, but actually looking at it. So what I've been doing is looking at my relationship with my wife. And where do I stand with that? Does my wife benefit from what I have to share? Do I provide leadership in my house? Am I being a husband? Would my wife actually stand and say, MashaAllah? Does she look up at me if I expect people to look up at me? Before I go to Jum'ah khutbah, if I'm going to speak about something, have I got that in my life? Without that foundational level of expertise, or not say expertise, competency rather, foundational level of success across your life, speaking out there, I realize, is just hot air. It's just more information, looking good, sounding knowledgeable. I can quote all the ahadith and all the ayat, and I could go into etymological analysis in Arabic to show you how masterful my language is. But it ended in a divorce and a lot of pain.
I mean, that happens though, right? You have...
Challenges are going to be there. Yeah. But, like, you are an established host for a podcast like this. If you're shivering right now, if you're dropping your things, if you can't speak on the microphone...
We just edit all those bits out.
Well, I think you've kind of got a level of mastery in this, right? You'd expect that a podcast host to have a level of expertise in what he's doing.
Basic competence, yeah.
Basic competence.
So, I mean, you start off low and then you build on it, right? Isn't there the threat that if somebody waits until, quote unquote, they're the perfect husband or perfect worshipper, then they won't actually take the first step in, doing stuff.
Well, that's the exceptionalism that you use not to address what's really going on. Can you see that?
I feel like I'm being proper psychoanalyzed here now. Go, carry on.
You know what? Let me tell you something. Every time this conversation comes up, and especially with people who are quite established, people who are quite successful.
And good looking. And
absolutely, mashallah. And...
Sorry, I've thrown you off.
No. So, brothers who are really successful...
I tell jokes when I'm chronically what's it called?
No, I'm beginning to miss your jokes because I've been watching some of your podcasts and I'm like, wow, this is really nice, something funny. And I'm the kind of guy gets intense. So keep the jokes coming, that'd be good. So when I speak to brothers who are quite established in their field, who are successful in the da'wah, or I mean that successful in themselves in terms of getting them a name, right? People who are recognized for their work. When you speak with them and you kind of like try and get a little bit real with them about life, then we get this exceptionalist statements coming out like, well, Nuh alayhi salam, look at his wife and his son. Or they'll be like, well, look at Umar and his relationship with his wife and, you know, that incident. They throw in these exceptions to justify their status quo. Why don't they look at, like, I would say, well, why don't you look at Fir'aun? Fir'aun's wife was amazing. Maybe you need to look at yourself and see where you stand. So we kind of also use this exceptional statements to let us off from looking at what is really going on. The fact of the matter is, you and I know when we are doing well. Yeah? Like, it's very clear when the ummah is doing well. It's very clear when I'm doing well in my relationship with my wife, or you're doing well in your business or your health.
Is it more like just a product of one's own optimism or pessimism? You know, sometimes I speak to people, and when they're given a summary of the state of the Muslim ummah, it's depressing as hell.
It is.
But some people, when actually, you know, the stuff they talk about, and they kind of lift your spirits, and it's more of an empowering, you know, look at the strength and the khair that's in this ummah.
Absolutely.
You know, but it just needs X, Y, Z to kind of. So isn't it more of we're projecting whatever we kind of want when we're describing stuff?
Yeah, that's a really good objection, actually. Is it absolutely? You know, we've got to look at things as they are. So my invitation is that we look at al-haqqu kama hu. Well, I don't know even know I went to Arabic. Like we say, Allahumma arin al-haqqa haqqan warzuqna ittiba'a, right? We make this dua, Allah show me reality as it is. So we've got to look at reality as the good of it that we like, and the bad of it that we don't like, maybe.
Don't just focus on one bit.
Yeah, don't just focus on the negatives. No, look at the positives.
Would you agree that we should have an overall optimistic lens and an empowering lens that, okay, here are the problems, don't put your head in the sand, here are the problems, but look at it, look at them as opportunities for improvement, for work, for coming close to Allah.
We can have a look at that. We could have a look at that, and maybe I want to come back to this in a little bit, right? In terms of how do we look at things, and how does the way you look at things, how does it impact what we see, and what kind of actions we can take to make a difference, right? Yeah. So, you know, you were saying about what about all the good stuff in the ummah, and I've also heard that for a long time. You know, there's al-khayru fil ummah, or we still have good in the ummah. In fact, there's a prophetic saying about that, you know, that there will always be لا تزال طائفة من أمتي على الحق منصورة. A group of people who always remain on the طائفة المنصورة, on the victorious path,
so named after you.
I ask Allah to make us all from those people, but I think, you know, this conversation, I'm going to try and be as positive as possible, and by positive I mean not negative positive, I mean non-normative, meaning just looking at things as they are. And when we look at things as they are, the judgment of it, like it's good or it's bad, it's positive, it's negative, it's pessimistic, it's optimistic, you can put this aside for a bit, right? Just see how things are, so we can have a start.
So how are they?
Well, where do you want to look?
What's your advice? Imagine like you have the ummah watching right now.
I don't give advice, to be honest with you. I leave that to the specialists to do. But
so that can be your advice. Listen to specialists.
Yeah, probably. But they've probably heard this before too. Like, listen to specialists, and it's not made a difference to them. So maybe you look at what makes a difference. Don't keep doing the same thing. Like we said, the status quo, there's a reality that you're living right now. Like Salman, your weight. You've been doing a particular thing. If you're concerned about your weight, I'm not sure you're concerned about your weight, are you? Do you get concerned about your weight?
Yeah, I've been losing weight in Ramadan.
Okay, great. Now,
Ramadan.
So whatever you do about your weight, however you're being about your weight, your attitude towards it, etc., is God knew where you are. It doesn't matter how much you know, really. And it will continue to be this way. Most likely it will continue to be this way. Unless you take a radically different approach to it. Like you need something that's going to really knock you off your trajectory. What's that going to be? Most people don't actually make a difference in their life until they hit either death or a very, very critical illness or a huge loss in their family. Until then, it's like, oh, we just carry on as it is. So you and I are going to carry on as it is. You're going to carry on with your health as it is, I'm telling you. I mean, this is on this is on record now, right? You will carry on as it is, and we'll probably see you in your 50s, you know, with the same kind of round, mashallah, lovely shape. And I hope you don't take it as an offense. Because changes don't happen like that.
How did that happen?
We need.
Do you have to wait for,
Mahdi?
you know, some earth-shattering event?
Well, we have an option, right? So you can either wait for the earth-shattering event, like some kind of a moment of extreme difficulty, for you to reconsider everything, or maybe that's the kind of conversation we should be having all the time, to really look at what the reality really is in my life, and doing something about it. So, how much do you weigh, Salman?
That's classified. I'll tell you later.
Well, consider you don't know your...
Over 100 kilos.
Most people don't know where the metrics are.
Yeah.
You know, they don't know how much they've got in the bank account to spend. They don't know where their health is, their health metrics are for them to actually do anything about it. We don't know what the state of our ummah is. We just say, alhamdulillah, everything is good. We don't know where our children are and their iman is or their deen is. Oh, we can't measure those things until something really horrible goes wrong. And then even we justify it, like, oh, it's exception.
So the first, let's say, practically speaking, the first stage, first step is to set up some metrics, some measurements where you can actually charter, put numbers.
I would say the other way around. I said, just first look at what your life is. What's important to you and how are they? And then you can probably develop some metrics.
So health, children's tarbiyah, you know, finance, whatever people.
Yeah, your sense of
have
comfort, your sense of peace in your mind,
and then put, I guess, numbers to those things, or things that you can measure. Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it staying the same?
Yeah, you could be quantitative or qualitative, but you can have a look at it, and you talk to your wife and she'll tell you. Talk to your children, they'll tell you. Talk to the world around you, not those who are, you know, like in their chamber with you, so it's an echo chamber situation, but actually talk to people out there and find out what's going on. But most of us are the best judges of ourselves. What's that ayah? You are the person who knows yourself the most. Yeah? I can't. And what I see is not... Exactly. Like that could be the starting point of our entire conversation. بَلِ الْإِنسَانُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ بَصِيرًا وَلَوْ أَلْقَى مَعَاذِيرًا. And consider we do that. That Allah says, بَلِ الْإِنسَانُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ بَصِيرًا. But the human being knows himself insightfully. وَلَوْ أَلْقَى مَعَاذِيرًا. Even though he gives excuses and reasonings on the outside world. And we do that all the time. Like, I know I might look good in front of you, talk good in front of you, but what's happening behind the scene? It's behind the scene. And I think it's only you can actually have a look at that and see where do you stand in your life. So if I ask you, where do you stand in your health? How's your health, Salman?
The pre-prepared answer, good, alhamdulillah.
But let's go beyond the pre-prepared answer. Like, that's what's probably
So, I mean, I know one brother, he like an older person. I think a few years ago, I was much more overweight, and he was like, "Look, man, you need to lose weight." And I think since then, alhamdulillah, like it kind of triggered something. I lost like 20 kilos since then. So it's slowly kind of going down, ups and downs and stuff, alhamdulillah. But I think that him saying that, because I didn't really notice, like, you know, because just busy, whatever, and you just have the habits, even though you go to gym and stuff similarly regularly, but not enough, for example, cardio versus other stuff. So you still end up kind of, unhealthy weight. So that, it didn't require like a massive thing, alhamdulillah. It was more like, you know, just him saying, have you weighed yourself? You're looking again fat.
Yeah, and they made a difference for you, right? That kind of straight talk actually makes a difference. even though it might sometimes be like unpleasant at the beginning, but in the long run, it's like it's made a difference for you. It could have felt like, oh, why is this brother talking to me like that for? Or why is Brother Mustafa asking me this question?
And I guess it's important for us to be that, not in public platforms like a podcast or whatever, but al-mu'min mir'atu akhi. The believer is a mirror to his brother. So we should have people that we give advice to and get advice back, and it should be in private. It should be we had this an exercise, really nice one, mashallah, in one of the tarbiyah programs, looking at this hadith and drawing kind of reflections from it, pun intended. And there's an article in Islam Truancy called "Reflecting on Your Mirror" or something like that. So there was like 40 plus reflections about that hadith, So what does a mirror do? It gives you an accurate, if the mirror is in good health, it gives you an accurate reflection. It doesn't exaggerate your positive or negative features. You have to keep the mirror clean, The mirror gives you advice, your reflection to your face. It doesn't hold it and then give it to someone else.
Absolutely.
There's lots of good things. So that requires, I guess, some kind of... and this is what Shaykh Haytham says a lot, that you can tell the difference between someone who received tarbiyah as an individual and as part of a group.
Yeah.
They're far more, I think, rounded. Not in the rounded this sense, but people who have a cohort, they advise each other. You can, they have that patience, a bit more resilience, I think. Whereas someone, otherwise, some people, when the PowerPoint's not working, all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of... I actually recently came to be present to this in Surah Al-Fatiha when we say, Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, not ihdini. Allah, guide me to the right path. No, you say guide us. So guidance requires this, community. Guidance requires you working with others.
إياك نعبد.
Yeah, وإياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. Not individual success, but actually in a communal setting, in the plural us setting. Yeah. So absolutely, we definitely need that. Now, look, we've spoken a lot about the need for looking at things as they are, and the impact of not looking at things as they are in perpetuating the status quo. But what is the status quo? What's happening with our ummah? And what's important for us to look at? So
Depends who you ask.
Depends. Well, I'm asking Salman.
I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. I think, as some of our mashayikh say, the ummah needs every group, right? For a good revival, for a strengthening of the ummah. It's not like one group or one jama'ah or one sect or madhab has to vanquish all others. No, you need everyone. It's like one body. And I was thinking about that as well. I injured my foot like a year or two ago. And I was just reflecting on that hadith. The ummah is like one body. And how, look, the foot doesn't do the same thing as the eyeball. Doesn't do the same thing as the, the spine. But they're all important. The problem occurs when someone's a bit too excited about his or her niche, and they say this is the thing for the ummah. This is anyone else, you're focusing on that, you're wasting your time. This is what you really should be doing. Not knowing that them being involved in that, whether it's a political movement or a sect or whatever, that kind of focuses on one thing more than others. Them being involved in that is more a function of their personality, what circles they wandered into when they were in their formative years, what suits their own temperament. And what the ummah, I think, really needs is the ability to coordinate and synergize with all of these different talents, temperaments, specialisms, I was saying, you want the dhikr of the Sufis, you want the zeal of the Hizb ut-Tahrir or whatever, you want the and I was just thinking that each group brings something to the table, and what we need is good management of those resources, I think. as well as other resources. So this is a human element. We have vast amounts of wealth, land. We have people. We have not just people. We have people who gather once a week. Many of them, tens of millions of them, maybe hundreds of millions of them.
Yep.
And they're forced to sit down and listen to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And
it's haram for them to speak. We have that resource, and that's always been capitalized upon historically by this dynasty or that. That's like how they broadcast their.
So we have amazing amount of resources, undoubtedly, and we have a lot of talent, undoubtedly. And when I see you doing this, and then brothers taking advantage of different technologies and mediums and social media and YouTube channels, and people are doing lots of really great stuff out there. I think doing is great. Tools are really great, undoubtedly, because Allah has blessed all of us. But what are we doing with them? How effectively are we using them or not is a question that I think we need to ask, without the assessment and judgment of it, like, oh, good or bad. But just like, where are we with things, man? So where are we with our youth, for example? You give khutbah, which mosque? Oh, is that?
A few different one each week.
Okay.
Keep getting kicked out.
Well, how many youth do you see? Percentage-wise, do you think in the khutbahs?
Well, I do one at a youth club, which is
Well, for the youth, absolutely.
yes, in youth club, but it's full of uncles normally anyway. But yeah, I mean, it depends. Obviously, when it's school holidays, then it's maybe about 50-50.
Okay. So
when it's outside of holidays and fewer youth.
Okay, now, I've been doing khutbahs for over a decade. 2 decades probably now. And I see the same faces. If I see the same faces 20 years, where is the next generation? Where are the third generation, the fourth generation of Muslims in this country? And I can tell you that because I know
in
from
the
my
overflow room.
Yeah, you'd hope. Inshallah, they're in the overflow room. Yeah, that's what probably parents are thinking. Like, inshallah, they're in some mosque somewhere. But in my masjid, where we've got, like, at the moment, I think with the last census said something like 30% of youth population, or 33% of youth population in the UK are Muslims, like from Muslim families. A huge youth population.
I think more than half of the Muslim community is under 30 or something.
Yeah, it's like crazy amount of potential.
16, something like that.
It's a huge amount of potential in the future there. Now, how many of those are turning up in the masjids? I wouldn't put it at 5%. Although when I go to the, say for example, I go to university, I do khutbah regularly at City University. And at City University, they have
hopefully a lot of students.
Yeah. There's 25,000 students at the university, of which about 5,500 are Muslims.
Is that it?
Well, that's 5,000? Over 5,000.
So it was 20%.
20%.
Yeah.
But how many turn up for the khutbah, for the Jum'ah? 500, alhamdulillah. You look at it, it goes, mashallah, the hall is full 500. But what percentage, 500 or 5,500?
It's about 10%.
Just under 10%, right? And then what percentage of those people who come to the khutbah will actually turn up to something beyond just sitting and listening to the talk, where there's a bit more tarbiyah involved? About 30.
Depends if there's pizza.
Okay, yeah. I mean, where's my
pizza?
That's how
I was radicalized. So
Yeah.
you want to come to this talk? Nah, I'm a bit busy. There's free food there as well. Okay, what time?
Yeah, well, the free food is always a good one, man. I mean, you think, when the Prophet says, Afshu salam, it's a great thing.
Second the manifesto.
Absolutely. But so the youth situation now is that a lot of them don't turn up in the masjids.
I mean, there's a, I think Islamic Network and MCB have been doing the country's largest survey of Muslim youth. I think I'm waiting to hear back about that. I don't know if they published that yet.
Okay.
But yes, it would be good to get a data-driven idea, a picture of this.
Sure.
Because what I get, I speak to a lot of youth workers now and then, and some of them are very, again, pessimistic, like, the youth are being destroyed and but some of them are a bit more optimistic. So again, it's hard for me to Obviously it's an important demographic we need to.
I think we just
have
got to look at things as they are, right?
Yeah.
And for the lack of data, we had Census 2021 data, but it didn't do any of the religious.
Not yet, yeah.
They didn't take that into consideration, so we're not going to see that come out of.
I think they're going to be releasing some of that data, bivariate data or something, whatever they call it, for the different metrics put together.
Yeah, but they
age
didn't take
and religion and stuff.
They didn't take religion into account in the last census data. So unless somebody's
They did. No, the last in 2021.
Okay, well, last time I looked at it, it said not.
They're just releasing it slowly. Yeah, the different data sets. But I mean, imagine if you didn't, regardless of what you get, you still want to, from a first principles perspective, you still want to put things in place, right? You make sure, for example, the masjid is welcoming to, young people. Make sure there's things for young people to do. What would you?
Yeah, well, you're going to solutions, I think, and like looking at solutions. What can we do? And that might not be really conducive. It's like you go to a doctor and the doctor goes, you say, oh, I've got pain here and I've got aches there and I'm sleepless. And he goes, oh, okay. You're not going to trust that versus the doctor you go to and he does your bloods and he checks you properly and he checks the symptoms. Who are you going to work with?
But can you envisage any scenario, getting any data or any status quo that would inform you to say, you know what, let's not make the masjid more welcoming to young people?
I would say you look at where you are. And I'd invite our viewers, listeners here, to look at where you stand. If you're in the responsibility as a khatib, if you're an imam anywhere, look at your masjid. Don't worry about what's going on out there in the world. You are a microcosm. You are a reflection of the entire ummah. What is happening where you are? How many youth are there? What are the youth actually dealing with right now? Like in the university, I speak to the students. Their main issues are distractions from studies, the opposite sex, relationship with opposite sex, challenges with money, breaking up with their parents not understanding them, generation gap thing. And then there is the lure of the hedonistic lifestyle. That's what they're dealing with. And then they graduate from university, and then you've got marriage. Look what's happening to a marriage. I mean, from your gut feelings, from who you know, your life, what percentage of people are getting married soon after they graduate from university?
No idea.
If you talk to local people, and there's a very respectful community leader in this area, I won't probably name right now.
Can I guess?
Go on.
I'm joking.
You know him anyway.
Yeah. Community leader.
Yeah, one of those. He said that 2/3 of the marriages among young people, those who do get married, most people are leaving marriage until after 30. Most men are. Young women are looking to get married, probably, but Muslims, women who identify themselves as Muslims, are looking to get married, but it kind of takes a long time. They're kind of pushing towards the 30s, just like the community we live in. Like the culture we live in, that's where people start around their 30s thinking about settling down. Our youth are dealing with the same thing. He says 2/3 end up in divorce within 6 months. So we've got that going on. We've got generally Muslim households. What are our challenges? Like I can tell you from my family, right? Fourth generation in this country, not interested in religion. Haven't been interested in religion. Their parents are super duper, practicing and even preaching, but their children?
Why is that, do you think?
Well, you know your situation and I know mine. And I think everybody knows theirs, and I think they need to, if they don't know their own circumstances, why their son is not, or daughter is not involved in what they're doing, why their own family are not the first person to listen to them and their preaching, then you've got to look at that. Yeah. Now, I've looked at socioeconomic indicators. It's one indicator of how well we're doing as a community. That looks at our health as a community. That looks at things like domestic violence, divorce rates, employment, education, etc. And unfortunately, you will find that we're not doing great. What percentage of the prison population are Muslims at the moment?
I had 14 somewhere in my head.
Yeah, that was the 2011 census. The recent one is 19%.
Okay.
19%.
Is that because people keep converting to Islam in prison to not get beaten up?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Could be.
Okay, alhamdulillah.
Could be. But, you know, these are metrics, if you look at it, they're not really like, wow. But we do have wow metrics too. Like, we're the biggest contributor to charity as a community. Like, during Ramadan, Muslim community contribute more to charity. Yeah.
Doctors.
And probably as well, yeah. And lawyers and engineers.
Dr. Khan.
We have all of that. We've probably, in terms of, if you look at Muslim population as the world.
So it's like polarized, maybe, like two curves.
Yeah, and overall, I mean, if you look at like wealth per capita, if you took at the entire Muslim world population and the wealth that's in our lands, Muslims are very, very wealthy overall. But on a local level, it's not a homogeneous, it's not like a common pattern among Muslims to be doing better in all of those metrics. Like, we're generally better off in our health, we're generally better off in our family relationships, we're generally better off in our education. We're not. You can't say that. So, we have, and at the same time, we've got like, how many mosques do you have in the UK now?
I don't know.
I think the last 2011 census was 2,220 something. That's a lot of mosques. And they're growing. Every year we're building new mosques.
MashaAllah.
So it's not lack of mosques. MashaAllah, we're building a lot of mosques. Imams. Do you have lack of imams in this country? Look at the number of Sharia graduates. How many Sharia graduates do you think we get every year? Out of, say, Medina University, like British students who go to Medina University and come back, people who are going to Zaytuna and coming back, people who are studying in Malaysia Islamic University, people who are studying in other Islamic universities in Karachi and dotted around the world, and they're coming back here.
Even homegrown ones.
And even homegrown ones.
For thousands.
Thousands every year. But what's the trajectory of the Muslim youth in terms of their spiritual, social health? So,
what do you propose though? Someone might say, you know what, this is just depressing.
It is.
This is just complaining. What's your solution?
You're right. I mean, I think it's
what are you going to do about it, Mustafa?
I think it's important to get impact, the present to the impact of what we're talking about. It's like, you know, has your wife ever told you don't listen?
Sorry, what?
Has your has your wife?
No, never ever. She's never. I've never heard her say that.
Yeah. Okay. Mine has. Okay. Now, why? See, what happens is we men have a tendency of like, oh, there's a problem. What's the solution? We're not even willing to look at what the problem is. How did it come about? Where is it coming from? We're very quick to say, oh, so what's the solution, brother? What if? No, I don't have a solution. We need to look at where we stand. And maybe together we can co-create something. Together we can discover something new. But we've got to get real of where do we stand at the moment.
I think a common solution, so you call it a solution and call it a roadmap to where to go from here is unity and cooperation and coming together, bringing minds together and managing the resources that we have to get, you know, subject matter experts, get people on the ground, get khatibs, get imams, ulama, youth workers, different groups, different geographical regions in the UK, for example, at least starting off, and in a wider ummatic kind of vision.
Absolutely.
To come together and, you know, try to hash out some of these things.
Do you think that's a new solution?
Not a solution necessarily, but that's how a solution will come.
But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, 1448 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I remember this. I met this sheikh in Mauritania. They call him al-Nawawi because of his expertise in hadith. He's like a Nawawi of their time, right? In Mauritania. He said to me one thing. He said, "Oh, when you go back to the UK, work on unity. Get Muslims together." And you know that's one of the things that I've been working with Sheikh Haytham before is try and get people around the table from the different community backgrounds, different kind of denominations.
One of my earliest memories of you is, I think we were at Regent's Park Mosque or something, and we saw Anjum Chowdhury.
Oh, yes.
And all of a sudden, randomly, everyone's like just kind of walking off, and you were like trying to speak to him and, you know, being nice to him and giving him advice and stuff. I'm like, and he's just like rinsing you. He's like, what, you're a kafir or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, man, you got some sabr and resilience. Mashallah.
Well, I think the thing is, look, here, Sheikh Haytham has been going on about it for a very long time. It's not new. But what you've got to look at is how effective are we? The ideals are known, by the way. Like working together, all of that, what you've said, is not new knowledge. It
But
is
it's
stuff
not
that's
necessarily agreed upon by all.
known. Well, may not
There
be.
is resistance, and especially in the age of, I don't know if you've been connected in the last 8 years of your journey, or if you've been in a monastery somewhere, but social media has completely turned everything upside down. There's like new Islamic discourse just is on its head on social media.
Yeah.
And as you know, social media, you may know, social media thrives on polarization, on fracturing, on niche audience, on us and them. So there's grown a new social media Islam now where unity and cooperation is seen as something, negative, and seen as for that type of mindset. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا is about you and your mates, not about the whole ummah.
You know what? It's not new because we were in the 90s. We were fed the same thing, right?
Exactly.
Ahl al-bid'ah. You cannot cooperate with Ahl al-bid'ah. If you are, then
but
you're
now it's
gonna
on
be misled.
steroids.
Ya Allah.
Now Ahlul Bidah is determined by algorithms.
But consider that there have been ulama and ai who've been saying the same thing: unite, come together. They've been repeating this ayah to the people, but it's not making as great a difference as you'd like it to make.
I mean, yeah, maybe.
Okay, so what
But
do
we
we do?
still need to do it.
Well, absolutely. You can carry on doing the same thing, hoping a different result's
No,
going to
no,
turn
no.
up.
I mean, to see whether let me push back a bit. Let's be a bit scientific here. If you're not getting the desired result, it doesn't mean the thing you're doing is wrong.
Okay.
Because it could be many other factors at play. It could be that your result is here. You want to get here, your result is here. Had you not been doing that thing, your result would have been even worse.
Could be.
So, keep doing that and look for where you can bump it up to the desired outcome.
That's a really great way of looking at things, right? Now, if you're happy with the status quo, if you're happy with where you are, it doesn't matter. But if you're not happy with where you are, if we're not happy with where we are, and the conversation is about where we are really, if we're not happy with it, then we need to look at, hold on a second, if doing more of the same thing is going to make a difference. You don't accept it in real life. I'm telling you, like for example, if you've been eating green shake every day and somebody told you it's going to make you lose weight, and you've done it for 6 months, you're going to continue?
Yeah, but
Are you going to continue?
Yeah, because that drinking a green shake or whatever, if I understand why I'm doing that thing, it's like some people say, I go to gym every day and I'm not getting stronger or whatever. I'm not losing weight. Had you not been to the gym, you would have, gained weight. So at least what you are there, like we said, there's no such thing as stasis.
You think there is homeostasis, though? You think that
there's no stasis, right?
There isn't.
So nobody has to be completely happy with the status quo, but carry on working towards things that, because of from a strategic perspective, from a vision perspective, from your principles, from your values, that I should be doing this. I'm not getting the results I need, I desire. So find how to make it better, more effective, complement it with other things. But we're not going to say, that's wrong.
Well,
maybe there's other factors that.
Maybe
so maybe someone is going to the gym every day, but they're also eating a box of Krispy Kremes
every day. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the issue, not going to the gym.
Not giving that up.
Yeah.
So it may be you need to do something more additional. Yeah, but not just do the same thing and expect a different result. Though, you still have to look at what other factors are there.
What other factors are there?
Well, I don't know. I'm going to suggest something. So one of the things that prevents you and I from actually seeing things as it is, that we pray Allah to grant us this ability to see things as they are. One of the factors is we have this filtered reality. We carry these beliefs about things should be a particular way, and so we only look for things that confirm our bias. Yeah.
Yeah.
That goes, the Muslim is very good. I saw 500 young people in the mosque today. There was a youth activity with pizza. And you're like, everything is good, alhamdulillah. Can you see that? This confirmation bias, this filtered viewing of life, totally takes us off track. So how are we going to deal with that?
I don't know, I'll ask you.
I think first is, can you see that? That's the question. Can you see that you and I, we view reality, we let through in our lenses what we want to see.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that means there's a whole area of reality that we don't really see what's going on because it's too difficult.
But that's where bringing other people with different perspectives comes. It helps you, right?
Absolutely. So it's great to be present to the fact that this is what we do, and what helps us is to be around people who've got, you know,
two heads are better than one. Shura.
Absolutely. Yeah, we are human beings are very blind to
Democracy.
ourselves. Yeah. Yeah. Well, whatever works as far as I'm concerned, whatever makes a difference for you, regardless of whether you like it or not, is probably what's needed. You might not like a particular prescription, but that's what works. So you're going to do that. I think we've become an ummah where we are fixated on what's the right thing to do. And the right thing is not given by what's the result it's producing, but what we think is right, what we want to be right, what we think is in our text, an interpretation. And so we impose that interpretation on a reality that's not changing, and we expect a change. And over time, it creates this cognitive dissonance, and then people fall off the deen ladder. People become, I pray, but they're not really convinced. It doesn't empower them up. It doesn't empower these people anymore. Why? Because too much of a difference between what they expect, the prescription they carry with themselves, and the reality it's on the ground. I saw that in my life, and that's what really put me to a stop. Like, hold on a second, what's going on? We've got to accept, I think first thing is that there is this filtered view of reality. And then we'll groupthink. You mentioned earlier, like, unless we are actually going out there mixing and mingling, not only just MRDF stuff and Islam 21 stuff.
You need to sit with Ahlul Bidah.
You sit with people out there without your judgments and see what's going on, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe it'll make a difference. So we've got to get out.
So I'm really enjoying this conversation, but maybe for the wrong reasons, because I tend to like kind of really highly theoretical stuff anyway. But you were just saying that's the thing you're kind of trying to ironically push against, right? That's what led to your
absolutely.
So you're kind of rethinking and just cancelling all of your public stuff and just focusing on more practical things. So if we summarize so far to get the practical fruits of what you're saying,
I think we're going to be jumping the gun. I know you're probably short of time as well, and we're running.
In terms of what you said so far, because you have had some practical, a good piece of advice here, just to kind of get them out for the audience again. So one is beware of your own tendency as a human being, your propensity towards confirmation bias, just seeing the world as a projection from your inner self and your inner thoughts, and that's very important. And practical ways to do that is, or practical ways to combat that is sitting with people, with different people, right? Consultation, avoiding groupthink. There's many kind of established kind of protocols and things that you can do you can Google, people can Google, how to avoid groupthink and stuff in a work meeting or your local mosque committee or whatever.
This is asabiyya, or one of the impacts of asabiyya, which is hugely decried in our tradition. We do that. We mix and mingle with people who agree with us.
Yeah.
And we kind of identify ourselves with them. The more we do that, the less we're going to actually change the status quo. We're going to continue to maintain how things are. Absolutely. Now, something that I say is your situation in this life is correlated with your situation in the hereafter.
Interesting.
Your status in this life is a correlate of your situation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Can you think of some tradition or something in our tradition where we might...
So like you'll be resurrecting doing what you did?
You'll be resurrecting doing what you did. Okay. Or your maqam, your status with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reflected in your status in this world. They say, look at where Allah has established you now in this world to know where you are, where your maqam is in the hereafter. So when we have a detachment between the two, when you think, oh well, I'm in dirt, I'm stuck, I'm neck deep in murk and mire of sin. I'm neck deep in I'm rubbish in my family, my relationship with my children, my relationship with my siblings, or my health, or my finances. They're in a mess. But I'm going to Jannah and thereafter everything's going to be good, inshallah. That's the opium that keeps people stuck where they are. I think we really get that if Allah is guiding you, yeah, would you not be able to deal with any challenge that comes your way? If you've got God's guidance in relation to your health, for example, or the Prophet ﷺ's guidance in relation to your health, would you not be able to overcome any health situation?
I mean,
if Allah's guiding you, you want to lose weight, and
sounds
you've got
like
God's
a
guidance.
trick question here.
I
sounds
would
like
say,
a trap.
Well, because you might have to accept the fact that you're not guided in that area of life. And that's difficult to accept. I get that. Like, it's difficult to accept.
There's a difference in input and output, right?
Well, I would say that if the Prophet ﷺ, or if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's guidance is present in your relationship with your wife, then you expect your relationship with your wife to be amazing. And every time a difficulty comes up, you'll be able to deal with it because you've got guidance on your side. What is the point of having God's guidance on your side if it doesn't work? Well, it's not God's guidance.
That's a test.
Well, that's what we say.
Yeah.
We say, oh, the test is to stay in my challenge. No, the test is to get out. You know, Surah Al-Mulk.
Of course, yeah.
تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. So that He tests you to see which is the best in action, not test of you to who is the best in patience, in waiting. Like, if that was a test to remain in where you are at the moment, the difficulties you have with yourself, with your health, with your wife, with the children, with your finances, with your community, with being of service to people, with your extended families, if you have difficulties in those areas and you think it's supposed to be like that, good luck. Because Allah, He wants yusr for you. يريد بكم الله اليسر ولا يريد بكم العسر. If God wants ease for you and you're saying, no, God wants difficulty for me and I'm supposed to have patience, then the Prophet ﷺ would not have left Mecca. Why did he leave Mecca then? He should have said, then be patient. In the current understanding of what patience is, like sitting and waiting for something to change. Allah's going to help. We're just going to have to make dua and stay fast, brother. Everything's going to be okay. We wouldn't have Islam today. The people in Medina would not have Islam because the Prophet ﷺ would have stayed in Mecca. So, we've really got to look at it and maybe accept that, hold on a second, we might not have Allah's guidance in our da'wah. I might not have Allah's guidance in the way I speak. I might not have Allah's guidance because if I'm speaking and it's not making a difference, there's something missing here. I know we're very good to say, oh, you know, the circumstance and the people are not good enough and our youth are now misguided and the governments are terrible and the media is brainwashing our children.
So by guidance, you mean tawfiq here?
Hidayah. Yeah. I mean hidayah, straight. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's guidance be present.
So if somebody is listening here, they perceive that, you know what, I don't have Allah's guidance in my relationship with my parents.
Yeah.
What would you advise them? Or any area? How do you get Allah's guidance in those things? Is it just what you learn it in a book, or?
No, seek it out. You'd have to go and speak to people who are actually accomplished in that area. And this is the thing I think good for our audience to know is that if you're going to get guided by somebody, it's like I'm not going to ask Sheikh Salman for guidance on keeping in good shape. I'm not going to ask you. You might know all the theoretical stuff, but it's not really going to make a difference. I learned that the hard way. Yeah, all of the khutbahs for 15 years were not really making a difference. You know,
I mean, you don't know that.
Well,
it could be
from
that.
what I can see. Iqbal said something very beautiful. You know, he says, كلام الروح إلى الأرواح تسري. He says, what comes from the heart goes to the other hearts. وتدركه القلوب بلا عناء, and the hearts take it in without any difficulty. It doesn't take our intellectual understanding and agreeing, any of that. Effective words are something else. So I could be missing the Prophet's guidance on effective speaking. And if I'm having difficulty with my wife, absolutely, I have missing God's guidance, the Prophet's guidance in that area of my life. It's difficult to accept because I could be an alim and oh my God, I've got this issue. And what am I doing? I'm blaming her. I'm blaming the world. But I'm muwahid. who doesn't accept any kind of other authority or assigns agency outside of himself to Allah and Allah to other things in Islam. We don't do that. Otherwise, we become victims of our circumstances, victims of other people, victims of governments, victims of all other powers. That's not La ilaha illallah. And I think that's a different conversation, right? A totally different conversation. And
so make takfir anyone here?
No, I think absolutely not. We don't want to do that at all. But I think we can really have a look at what is it to be La ilaha illallah. Look, I ask you this question, right? Why is it that we say, oh, look at the Sahaba, look at those Salaf al-Salihin, look at those previous people, and how great and amazing they are? Well, why aren't we all great and amazing today then? We have the same thing, don't we? We've had the same narrative of religion and religiosity and what it means to be Muslim for the last 50 years at least. We haven't seen an improvement in the trajectory.
Haven't we?
I don't know. We could ask. That's why we're looking at WhatsApp. What the WhatsApp? Have a look at the WhatsApp.
Yeah. So I mean, to continue the summary for people to take away these fruits. So avoid. I've been taking some notes. Avoid groupthink. You described some things of how to get across. How to get how to avoid groupthink and your personal, observation, confirmation biases. Try to look at metrics for qualitative and quantitative metrics for what the status quo is.
Yep. Look where you stand in your life.
Where do you stand in the different values, the things that you value, your health, your finances, your your relationship with Allah and people. Seek out guidance, therefore. So you might find, I don't have guidance. My relationship with XYZ or my finances or health or knowledge, it's not where I want it to be.
Yeah.
So seek out specific professional guidance in those regards.
But why don't we do that?
Some people do.
Some people do, absolutely. But
that's what I'm doing right now.
For those who do, that's really great. But for those who don't, we want to be helpful to them. Consider, some of us are too vested. We're too invested in a particular narrative. We're so invested in one thing, for example, fear Allah and everything's going to be okay. More taqwa, brother, and everything's going to be okay. Whatever the narrative we're invested in, it's very difficult to do. Divest. It's very difficult to go trace back because we've said so much. And what are we going to do now? Too vested in an argument, too much resources, too many years, too many books we've committed to one thing. How are we going to retract that? And it's a
Why do you need to retract it?
Well, maybe because...
What's an example of it? I mean, fear Allah is very broad.
That's the thing. It's very broad. There's nothing wrong with fear Allah. Have taqwa, there's nothing wrong with that. But just saying that, is it making a difference? Or maybe it's about time we look at, hold on a second, how do we do that?
I mean, one of the things you reminded me of is something I say often, and maybe like an observation about Islamic discourse today is, how, so the minbar has its own discourse, its own address. Like the Prophet ﷺ, a hadith, the prophetic speech, you have to, I mean, the scholars of usul will say, look, this hadith, how did the Prophet ﷺ say it? What role was he assuming? What hat was he wearing, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for want of a better word? Was he saying it as preaching? Was he saying it as a military general? Was he saying his hadith as a father, as a husband? Was he saying it as qada between two people? Because the answer to these questions radically changes how you and where you put that knowledge.
Absolutely.
Right? So today, maybe the majority of how we absorb, the general Muslim absorbs Islamic discourse is the discourse or the address of the minbar, which is very hyperbolic. It is black and white. It is for good reason. It shakes you, it wakes you up. It's supposed to carry out a certain function. It focuses on general principles, not giving the application necessarily, right? But if we have generations of people just absorbing that type of address, it's not to say we have to divest from that or just kind of that's wrong. No, it has its place. But if I'm bringing that address now into an argument with my wife, that's an absolute disaster, right? Imagine the khatib, he says on the minbar, don't compromise, be a strong believer. something words like this is important for that address, that context. And saying now, if the two people are arguing, to tell them don't compromise, stand firm on the truth, that's the worst thing you can tell that person, right? It's in the context of a dispute. So to me, it's more like compartmentalizing the different types of address, the different types of discourse, so you apply it in the right place.
I think as people who are in public sphere, talking in the public domain right now, we've got to go more than just talk. We can't just prescribe generic stuff to people. We've got to really look at what's going on. Is it making a difference? And don't throw the responsibility on their shoulder. Oh, it's on them. If they don't implement it, then they're... No. We've got to go beyond that. Oh, وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغ. This is not even balagh. You know, there's a I hear a common one.
Want to translate that?
It's only for me to convey. What is conveying? It's not وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْإِخْبَارِ. I'm only there to send the message across, let the people know.
So what is tabligh?
Well, that's what we've got to look at. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says something
requires at least 3 days.
Well, look at this.
40 years is preferred.
But here's a challenge for you, okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ ذِكْرَ تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And reminder benefits the believer. What if the reminder doesn't benefit? Is that a reminder?
Interesting.
Is that a tafkir?
Or they're not mu'minin.
Or they're not mu'minin, whichever it is. But we've got to look at it, right? Yeah. Beyond like, oh, brother, I told you. Oh, I've told my community. I've been on the mimbar. I've done the khutbah. I've written down.
It requires a personalized approach. That's tarbiyah.
That requires a prophetic approach. He didn't write books.
I was telling my kids, I think, the other day. No, it was a class. In Surah Al-Hujurat, Allah says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا ترفعوا أصواتكم فوق صوت النبي أن تحبط أعمالكم وأنتم لا تشعرون. So harsh. Yeah. Don't raise your voice. ولا تجهروا له بالقول كجهر بعضكم لبعض. Don't raise your voice in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ, and don't call him like you call each other, lest your deeds become rendered null and void. But then, إن الذين ينادونك من وراء الحجرات أكثرهم لا يعقلون ولو أنهم صبروا حتى تخرج إليهم لكان خيرا لهم والله غفور رحيم. Those people who are shouting and calling your name and they don't use their minds. If only they had waited for you to come out. But Allah is most forgiving and most merciful. So the people who ostensibly did something less severe, they got a harsher warning and rebuke. And people who did something more severe, materially, they got, such a soft. They're not even rebuked. It's a very, very light rebuke. Yeah, and that's because this is tarbiyah. This is the first group was Abu Bakr and Umar and the senior companions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is holding them to a stricter criterion, right?
Absolutely.
But the Bedouins who just come from the desert, from new to Islam, maybe he's very soft and gentle with them.
That's why I'm not being gentle with you. But look, I'm gonna suggest something a little bit radical. Okay, you want to be with it?
Okay, let me make sure I'm sitting down.
Covering up.
That's all the time we have left for today.
Covering up is one of the...
I hope you're not going to take this into some weird naturist discussion now.
Now...
Sorry, I completely thrown you off.
No, you know why? Because at work, we recently got an inquiry. We recently got an inquiry from the vice president of this naturist organization. And you just mentioned them like... Astaghfirullah. Now, covering up, right? What we're really good at is putting things under the carpet. It's okay, bro. Hush, 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 hush. We do it to others, but more importantly, you do it yourself. You and I are not willing to look at what's going on because it's sometimes too difficult to look at. And you can bring compassion to that. We have to bring compassion to that. That's why it's Bismillah. We begin in the name of God, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Like, we have to really look at ourselves, our people within who are in this realm of work, what we're doing outside in the public, and our people, our family and friends. We really got to bring a lot of compassion and love to that. Without that, we're not going to make a difference. I know we have this polarized attitude. You're either with me or you're against me, and that's not taking us anywhere. Even the Prophet ﷺ, when he goes to Mecca, what does he say about Abu Sufyan? He's standing in the borders entering Mecca to take Mecca back. He says, "Man dakhala bayta Abi Sufyan fahuwa amin." And Abu Sufyan on that side was saying, if Muhammad goes beyond this line, his neck is going to be rolling on the floor. His head is going to be rolling on the floor. That's what Abu Sufyan says. But the Prophet ﷺ, he says, no, he who enters the sanctuary of Abu Sufyan, he is safe. He kind of gave him his status and recognized and acknowledged his sworn enemy for who he was. And then Abu Sufyan joins him. How much do we do that with the people we disagree with?
ادفع بالتي هي أحسن.
Yeah. We're very good to write people off and put people down and they're wrong and you're wrong. And instead of, like, hold on a second. I care for you. I love you. Here's the way I'm looking at it. See if it's useful. Instead of, this is the right thing. If you don't do it.
I was just thinking this morning that it used to be that pre-social media, the enemies of Islam used to be people who actually hate Islam and are like attacking Islam and Muslims. But today, the enemies of Islam is somebody who disagrees with you. Social media Islam.
So covering up is a big issue, Salman. Like we tend to have this thing of don't talk about it. Hush, hush. But what's the word for covering up in Arabic?
Kufr.
So, I mean, that's enough said.
It's also al-maghfirah.
Well, yeah. So, and both go probably hand in hand. فاذكروني أذكركم واشكروا لي ولا تكفرون. And we kind of go, oh, that means just disbelieve in God. It's the covering up.
What do you mean?
We don't want to look at things as they are. We cover it, brush it under the carpet, hope everything's going to be okay, and it doesn't go away. We don't acknowledge the reality as it is. We don't acknowledge Allah's favors and His blessings in our lives as they are. We don't acknowledge the challenges we've got going on. So we live people like summun bukmun umyun fahum la yarji'un. People who don't see, deaf, dumb and blind, and we're not going to make a difference. So we've got to stop covering up.
So on that positive bombshell, that positive note, we need to wrap up soon because time's running away with us.
It is.
But what's your final... So we've been given a few summaries, but what's your final, I guess, piece of advice for the listeners in terms of take-home message?
Check the temperature.
I like it.
Really look at where you are. Look at where...
Do you want to look at the camera and say that? Go some more directly to the audience.
Look at where you stand.
Claim today.
Look, the whole point, I know, for me, I came here to have this conversation is not detract to solutions and look at everything as what could we do, and there's so many things what we could do, but just look at where
How
we
to
stand.
save the Ummah in 3 steps.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Otherwise, it would have been done by now. Look, if you and I think we've got solutions, then forget it. There's no point starting, because if we had solutions, it would have been done. In fact, if there was a solution out there, we wouldn't be in the situation we are in. Even though we theoretically say, oh, we know what the right thing to do is, but knowing the right thing to do, if it's not making a difference, it means there's a gap in there somewhere. So we've got to look at what the gap is between knowing it and putting it into practice. And that's what we've got to look.
So your message to people is check the temperature.
Yeah, check the temperature. Where do you stand? Get real. Look at things as it is. That's a starting point. And especially brothers. We're very good at, especially like intelligent, knowledgeable brothers, they go straight without looking at what's going on. They make a jump to conclusion. What's the solution? What's the solution? Let's go for the solution. You don't understand the problem yet. You don't know where it's coming from. Without that, you're going to create a solution that's going to perpetuate the status quo. You're going to go round and round chasing our tails. So, first point, where do we stand?
Check the temperature.
Check the temperature. Get it real.
Check the temperature. Avoid groupthink. Seek out guidance.
Yeah.
Specific guidance. Be with people who you disagree with. Maybe give you a different perspective. And divest from particular narratives that you might, or hold the possibility that there are other narratives.
Absolutely. But you know what the thing, Salman? If you're really present to the temperature, if you're really present to currently, say, your health and the metrics associated with the health and how it's impacting your life, how it's impacting your wife, how it's impacting your children, how it impacts your work, how it impacts how much you can contribute to the community, if you're really present to that, I wouldn't need to give you any advice. Why? Why wouldn't you need any advice?
Because I'd go to specific people for guidance.
You will seek it out. At the moment you're not present to how much maybe your weight gets in the way of you impacting your audience, impacting what you could do, how many places you can go to, how much energy you have. But you can find out what the temperature is with people around you. And then you will automatically be taking action. You wouldn't need Mustafa or anybody for that matter to give you a guidance. You'll be seeking it out. So check the temperature.
Okay. Jazakallah khair. Mustafa,
I hope it's not
al-Mansur.
too intense.
That was intense. I'm off to the gym. And Jazakallah khair for joining. Jazakallah khairan at home for watching. If you like this podcast / therapy session, give it a like and a share. Let us know in the comments what you think. If you agree, disagree. If you want to take the mick out of our guest or anything, I'm sure he'll be scouring the comments looking for constructive feedback. Inshallah.
And I say, if you disagree, it's probably better for you.
Okay, mashallah. We'll put. Do you have any details about how people can get in touch with you or look at some of your stuff or discuss?
I don't have.
Mention your khatib at Finsbury Park Mosque and Muslim Welfare House.
Yep. So they can find me in Muslim Welfare House or Finsbury Park Mosque or
wait outside in the car park.
But I hope we can have more conversations. Actually, look at more. So today was about establishing, check the temperature maybe, and we try to look at our youth a little bit and our family situations. Next time we can probably have a look at, okay, what would make a difference and where do we start?
Jazakallah khair. And Jazakallah khair to you. Barakallahu fikum. That's it for this episode of Unscripted. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.